Meanwhile, leaders from SADC and the East African community have concluded the historic summit with a call for the cessation of hostilities in the Eastern Congo, as well as the resumption of direct negotiations and dialogue with all state and non-state parties to resolve the ongoing conflict. In attendance were South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, Rwandan President Paul Kagame, Tanzanian President Samia Suluhu Hassan, as well as Kenyan President William Ruto, among others. The meeting in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania heard about the deteriorating security situation unfolding in Congo, which has also resulted in the loss of lives, as well as the creation of a humanitarian crisis. The leaders also called for the restoration of essential utilities and supply lines for food, as well as other essential commodities. Now, the joint summit also stated that the complex conflict must be addressed through the Luanda and Nairobi processes. Defense bosses from the two blocs have also been directed to meet in 5 days to provide that technical support on these commitments. The two regions have called for Luanda and Nairobi processes to be merged as they seek to stabilize the rest of Eastern DRC. Meanwhile, the leaders say uninvited armed forces must also withdraw from the territory of the DRC. All right, for more on this, let's now bring in Defense Analyst, Mr. Ricardo Teixeira. Ricardo, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for your time today. So the joint summit concluded with some resolutions in the DRC conflict. So what intrigues me is the fact that apparently there was no mention by our president in this part for the complete withdrawal of our troops from the DRC, meaning we are not likely to see our soldiers recalled from that particular mission. However, it was reiterated by the bloc that uninvited armed forces should withdraw. Please elaborate on this.
Afternoon. Thank you very much for having me. Yes, it's important to note that the processes that happened yesterday in Dar es Salaam called for foreign troops to withdraw. And the President and the DRD stated earlier in the week that we cannot unilaterally withdraw because we are part of a regional peacekeeping mission, although they incorrectly again refer to it as peacekeeping. But it's important to note that now, since they have called for foreign troops to leave, that we then can withdraw. I believe Malawi has also pushed forward to withdraw their troops. And regardless of whether or not we withdraw, the troops that are there have been there for over a year. They've had their deployment extended, and they are now confined to their bases on restricted rations. Regardless of whether or not the President feels we should move forward with the mission, this deployment of soldiers should be rotated out and brought home.
Mm-hmm. Look, Ricardo, an immediate ceasefire was also proposed, as well as the restoration of those essential services. I'm sure you heard in my intro there, along with the humanitarian aid to be facilitated and then continued to reaffirm its support for the DRC. This is now the bloc. Is this not speaking with a forked tongue, though, Ricardo?
Yes, I believe it is, because they want to call for a ceasefire and they want to stabilize peace in the area, but they call for an immediate one, but they're only going to let the defense ministers are only going to meet in 5 days. So there doesn't seem to be anything immediate about this, in my opinion. I think the bureaucratic processes mean this is going to drag on quite a bit before we see any action on the ground or any movement of troops trying to come in to stabilize the area. Because again, in order for there to be a ceasefire, there needs to be a neutral third party to maintain the peace. And also there's been no commitment from either of the countries in the bloc about who that is going to be. We'll potentially see something like that be discussed when the heads of the defense institutes meet in 5 days. But again, if whether or not they commit to anything during that meeting is a separate question.
Absolutely. And another interesting development that we understand, according to our reporters on the ground, an AU representative was actually barred from these talks, only to be let in later. And our president and the defense ministry kept reiterating to Parliament during the committees that took place about the repatriation of the soldiers, that the deployment was actually a resolution from the AU. So imagine now a representative from the body that is giving out these orders being barred from participating. What does this then say about the general summit, you think, Ricardo?
I think in this respect, the AU has been pretty dysfunctional. There hasn't been much talk or any calls for resolutions from the AU. They've been relatively quiet in that respect. And it shows that there are divisions within the AU and the regional blocs. And I do think that it's good that we've got the East African community and SADC working together on this. I think that these are two regional blocs that have a vested interest in the situation, and it's good to see them moving forward on it. But again, it just shows that there isn't the full level of commitment on a national or a continental level that the AU was first barred and then brought in halfway through. It's interesting to see how things are flowing at the moment, and it doesn't seem to be very friendly all the way around.
And one would think that that full commitment meant that the expectation, Ricardo, would have been that a long-term solution on the current conflict was actually found yesterday. So where does this then leave everything, since this 30-day ceasefire is in effect, and during this time the second phase will only be deliberated upon?
I think that a long-term solution is still a long way off. I mean, M23 recently called for their own ceasefire, which they used to consolidate their positions in the area, and have since then gone on the move again. And I think they're going to use this next ceasefire as another opportunity to just consolidate their positions and to reorganize and to entrench themselves, essentially. I don't see them willingly just withdrawing from the area and leaving the city. I think it's going to take more than just a bit of negotiation. There's going to need to be a bit of a carrot and stick approach, because right now they are the ones in a position of strength. They control the area, they control the city of Goma, the airport's closed, our troops are under their guard. So I don't see, in the 30-day window, there might be some process in the negotiation, but I don't really see what they stand to gain from just giving up their position of strength.
And do you then think, Ricardo, the summit then achieved its main objective?
I don't. I think it's good to see the process beginning and for there to be a process, and the consolidation of the Rwanda and Nairobi processes. It's good to see the level of negotiation amongst the states and some semblance of commitment. But I think we're still a way off from a long-lasting